This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Trade deadlines have honestly become the biggest time of the year throughout each sports season or each season of sports in this town. If it's not the trade deadline, it's the draft. And for all the wrong reasons.
We have to look forward to. Stop playing on our parade day.
Well, it's for all the wrong reasons. And I am honestly getting sick of it. I am sick of waiting to see which one of our superstars or which one of our... I can't even say superstars because we don't really have any of those in this town yet. Which one of our big-time players are we getting rid of? And how little assets are we getting in return? No, obviously we are going to be talking some trade deadline stuff on this episode. This is the Fan Report. We are on episode number 179. I'm Nick, and with me is Andrew.
What's up, guys?
We have obviously the trade deadline to talk about, along with some comments that came from the team and the coach and the GM. We have the Dolphins game to kind of rehash or recap, a look ahead to the Packers, as well as the Pistons on the other side. Pretty much kind of across down the street or down Woodward a little bit and across the street. Had a few games of their own, not necessarily at LCA, but
some of them were.
You can follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. We are brought to you by the Detroit Sports Podcast. You can follow them at Detroit Podcast. Andrew, what do you want to kick it off with today? Do you want to start with the Lions? I feel like they're going to take up a bulk of the episode just because of there's a lot to kind of go over there. There's a lot to kind of package together. And then, let's do that. We could finish with the Pistons talk. There's not as much there. But should we start with the trade deadline, or do you want to start with the game?
Let's go in
chronological order.
That's what I was looking for. Chronological order.
So Lions losing to the Dolphins this past weekend at home. I almost said in Miami, but at home.
That's an important point.
It is an important point because that is primarily where the Lions have been most successful, where we've seen their offense really kind of hum versus on the road where the Lions offense hadn't scored a touchdown in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Lions losing 31-27 against a surprisingly, well, I can't say really surprisingly good. They're a pretty good Miami Dolphins team. However, a team that's battling a lot of inner demons, and by that I mean injuries. But the first half, and especially right from the get-go, the Lions looked in control.
Oh, yeah.
They got out to a 2-touchdown lead. They seemed to be able to...
Not the first time we've done that in this season.
No, we've probably said Lions got out to a double-digit or 2-touchdown lead multiple times this year. Mm-hmm. To then turn around in the second half and put up 0 points. They got shut out the entire second half of this game. Scored 27.
Also not the first time we've done that.
No, it is not. It's happened a few times. It's
3 weeks in a row to be exact.
Yes, and they also it honestly looks to me like this team, and this really goes against the coaching staff. And I'm not just looking at Dan Campbell. I'm looking at Aaron Glenn. I'm looking at Ben Johnson as well. But this team is entirely and totally inept when it comes to making halftime adjustments.
That's surely what it looks like.
Adjusting to the halftime adjustments that other teams make. And this goes back to the game that they even won against Washington. Because the second half of that game, they had no answer in the second half for Washington. It just felt like Washington just ran out of time.
Then they finally picked it up late, though. But
right.
No, yeah, it's getting kind of ridiculous. I mean, and you look at the Dolphins. They were one of the best teams in the league the first 3 weeks of the season. They have looked nowhere near that in the last few weeks after losing Tua and then getting him back, and he didn't look 100% on Sunday. But I mean, they got blown out by the Jets.
He was, though.
They got blown out by the Jets. They lost to the Bengals, lost to the Vikings. The Steelers, they barely got past the Steelers. This was a very beatable Dolphins team at home. We knew they were going to expose your secondary. That's no surprise. But you got out to an early enough lead. You should have been able to maintain said lead. you can't get shut out in the second half. We haven't scored a second once. When we play our next game on Sunday against Green Bay, we will have gone over a month without scoring a second half point.
That's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I thank you for pointing that out. You have now made me even more depressed than I was about this.
Because if I'm not mistaken, the last time we scored a point in the second half was October 2nd.
I think you're right. The secondary, so Tua Tagovailoa obviously played a really good game. He put up 382 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 10.6 yards per attempt, which
not
led the
hard to
league
do against this secondary.
which led the league this past weekend. Tyreek Hill, 12 for 188. Jalen Waddle, 8 for 106 and 2 touchdowns. Mike Gesicki, 3 for 38 and a touchdown.
Those two receivers combined for about 300 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Those pass catchers just dominated our secondary. Dominated. And then I loved this Alliance. I call them Alliance propaganda, Alliance propaganda page. I saw a page on Facebook post something about how Kirby Joseph has been absolutely locked down in coverage. And I'm like,
I did see that. Yep.
And I'm just like, dude, that secondary just gave up 300 yards to two players this past weekend. There was nothing locked down about any of them. And, you hear the comments from Dan Campbell that they wanted to be in press coverage against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to jam them at the line, not let them get to get up to full speed and be able to burn past your defensive secondary. And you saw none of that. Well, come to find out, as a result, Aubrey Pleasant gets axed. Now, you know what this screams to me, Andrew? And now I don't necessarily disagree with the firing of Aubrey Pleasant. It sounds to me like it's very much a scapegoat.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Because the secondary is not the only...
The secondary is not the reason you didn't put up 0 points in the second half.
Exactly. The secondary is not the only reason this team doesn't play well on either side of the football. Has the secondary been good this year? Hell no.
No.
They've been terrible, but we expected them to be terrible. The linebackers have also been terrible. You know who else has been terrible? The defensive line. We actually expected that to be the best part of your defense. And they've been terrible.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not just secondary. You need to be asking questions about Ben Johnson. You need to be asking questions about Dan Campbell. You need to be asking questions about Jared Goff. I mean, there was that fourth. There was that fourth
about Dan Campbell for weeks now.
Yeah. There was a 4th and 2 call with Jared Goff. I still want to know if the call was for him to throw it deep to who was it, Josh Reynolds in the end zone.
That was an absolutely terrible play call.
I don't understand. We were watching that, and as soon as I saw him gearing up to throw deep, like we both screamed no at the TV.
We were in a new tap room that we discovered and just watching the game, having a good time, trying a bunch of different beers.
I was going to say adult establishment. I thought that was going to come off wrong.
And as soon as I saw him throw deep, before the play even finished, I just sat down. I slid up when I saw the release, and as soon as I saw it deep, I sat down. And I knew it was over at that point.
Now, in Goff's defense, he did make the throw. It was dropped.
It wasn't a bad throw. Goff, I don't think, played that bad.
I'm just curious about, was that the play call? Or, was the intent like a quick slant, but either Goff didn't make the read or he made the read and wasn't open?
Apparently, in what Dan Campbell said on 97.1 The Ticket the next morning, or yesterday morning, I believe, he came out and said that when looking at what the defense was giving us there, that was the number one read.
Really?
So they ran their pre-snap reads, and when looking at what the defense was showing, that was the number one read. Which at that point, you got to audible to something else.
But he wasn't open.
No, he wasn't. You can't have a deep ball on 4th and 2 with the game on the line in a situation where he's not going to be open, be your number one read. That's inexcusable in my mind. You've got to call off that play, roll into something else. It's
not like you're throwing it to your best receiver or something.
No, you're not. That's probably your 3rd or 4th best pass catcher in Josh Reynolds. And I know Jared Goff and Josh Reynolds have a great, rapport with each other, but Josh Reynolds didn't have a good football game. 2 catches for 14 yards on 6 targets. You could have gone to Amon-Ra St. Brown. 7 catches for 69 yards. Khalif Raymond, 3 catches for 76 yards. DJ Hawkinson, 3 catches for 80 yards. You had options. And you chose to go with a guy who was not having a good football game. I also want to throw some questions at the coaching staff and their decisions to play DeAndre Swift as much as they did. And he was on a pitch count. It was evident. He only had 10 touches in this game. However,
and Campbell said it was 1 touch too many.
If you are going to say that is one touch too many, why is he on the football field?
Mm-hmm.
If he is not healthy enough to play to play 60% of his role, why is he on the football field? And I asked the same question about Amon-Ra St. Brown the week that he came back when he only had 2 touches. And I'm not talking last week when they pulled him off the field. I'm talking the week prior. Why is he on the football field? Because he's clearly not 100%. He's taking touches away from guys that are having an effective game, a la Jamal Williams, 10 carries for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a good game. It just the decision making of this coaching staff just honestly blows me away. I don't get it. And I'm not going to fault Dan Campbell for challenging the catch and fumble or the incomplete pass in the first half. I'm not going to fault him for that.
I don't, because I still think it was a catch and fumble.
But on both sides of the ball, this team was miserable this weekend.
Did you see the screen grab or the picture of the play where the Dolphins were at the half-yard line or basically the goal line, and Amani Oruware's line so far up offsides?
Oh
have you seen this picture?
I have not, but that type of stuff, I honest to God, you got to turn off your filter in the background. But I honest to God wonder if that guy knows how to play football sometimes, honestly, because I want Oruware to be a good player. I really do. And at times he shows flashes of it. But then there are times where I look at him and go, dude, do you know where you are?
I do wonder that a lot of that is coaching too.
It is.
100%. It's not I'm sharing my screen to you real quick so you can see this, but because it's hilarious.
So speaking of Oruware, I was looking
that's just how bad he's been.
Oh my. Oh my. What are you doing?
He's so far.
He's not even lined up in the neutral zone. Yeah, he is lined up
almost parallel with Gesicki.
Yeah, behind the football. His heels aren't even in line with the football.
And he's looking over. It's not like he's not looking.
That I don't even know what to do. Wow. And I get it. I guess at that point, does it really even matter? Because other than the loss of the down, I mean, they're not going to move the ball anywhere.
Yeah.
So I was looking. I saw a tweet online today, or on Twitter today, of that 2019 draft. And I know this isn't Holmes or Campbell or anybody, but
we have no one left in there, do we?
We do. So round 1, TJ Hawkinson. We traded him away.
Yep.
Round 2, Jelani Tavai, who, fun fact, is actually playing a decent role for another team.
The Patriots.
Yep. Round 3, Will Harris, safety. Round 4, Austin Bryant, defensive end. Round 5, Amani Oruware. Round 6, Travis Fulgham. Round 6, Ty Johnson. Round 7, Isaac Nauta. Round 7, PJ Johnson. That is quite possibly one of the worst draft classes I've ever seen.
I still remember our reaction when we drafted TJ Hawkinson.
I was so pissed.
Is it still available on our Twitch page?
I don't know. Maybe. I might have it somewhere. But anyways, that's beside the point. That's not this regime. Neither here nor there. However, questions need to continue to come in on guys like Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. Because this team, as the weeks go by, this team looks less and less focused and keyed in, and it looks like they don't. Sometimes it looks like they don't even care if they win the football game. And then, reports, obviously, when the deadline comes to a close, and I guess we could transition into that. Lions did trade TJ Hawkinson away at the deadline. They traded TJ Hawkinson, a 2023 fourth, a 2024 fourth, for a 2023 second, and a 2023 third. However, it was to the Minnesota Vikings. You traded a young asset to a division opponent.
Yep.
And then Brad Holmes was asked today, his thoughts on it, and he said it didn't matter whether or not we were 1-6 or 6-1. He still would have traded him.
Do you buy that?
Not really,
Me neither.
because if you were 6-1 and you traded T.J. Hawkinson away, one, T.J. Hawkinson's probably a big reason you're 6-1. Two, you're trading away a good asset and a good young player and a big part of your offense away to a division opponent that you are fighting for the division lead at that point.
Yep.
Why
And
the
you only
hell would
got
you let that happen?
And you only got one pick in this draft, one pick next year, and you gave up 2 picks to do it.
I don't necessarily hate what they got in return. I hate the fact that it was in division, because if let's say he's around next season with the Minnesota Vikings, I'm sorry, but the Lions need to be at least playing meaningful games late in the season next year, in my book. Or Brad Holmes needs to be gone, because frankly, in the NFL, it's the way the league's set up is you're meant to rebuild within a year or two. You should be able to be ready to go competing year 2, year 2, year 3. And this team is now in year 2, and they're looking worse than they were year 1. And you have the owner coming out saying that this is a rebuild.
That's the number one thing that annoys me about this trade is it's really weird timing. If you wanted to get out from under Hawkinson's contract, which I don't blame you, because you're going to have to pay him like $10 million next year.
Right.
I would have thought that maybe you would have at least waited to the offseason to see what you can get in the draft, see what the team looks like, or do a draft day trade. Because right now you trade him for a couple pick swaps, basically.
Right.
Like it's not like you got this too good to be true deal to fire him off right now.
You got a pretty ho-hum deal in my book.
Yeah.
In all the end all be all, it's a net minus on TJ Hawkinson's value. He was a top 10 pick.
Like, I understand it's a tight end. You're not going to get like top tier return for
unless it's Travis Kelce,
a non-essential position.
But he never panned out to be that.
But I still I don't know. I feel like if you were going to make that move, it had to be at this juncture, it would have had to be like a too good to be true deal. And the way that Brad Holmes built it, I would have made that move whether we were 1-6 or reverse. He said if a move makes sense to a team, you make that move, whatever your record is. In what context does it make sense for a team other than to get out from under his contract?
Like, even if we want to believe that this is the year that the rebuild starts, right? That this is the year the rebuild starts and we're moving forward from here. This is supposed to be the year that they got the offense together. And early on, it looked like they did. Yeah. So are they now telling us that that's not the case?
Even Sunday, it looked like we have an offense. For a half, yeah.
So by trading TJ Hawkinson, is that them telling us that the offense isn't ready? That the offense isn't put together now? And we're not going to just solely focus on the defense next year in this offseason? Because if that's the case, I don't know what the hell's... what direction is this team going at this point? Because in this past offseason, it really did look like they were going to focus on the offense and add key pieces to this offense. Bringing in DJ Chark, bringing in, drafting the way they did. Drafting Jamison Williams, bringing in Penei Sewell last year. It really looked like the offense was a key focal point for this team this past offseason. And to start the season, it looked like, this is much improved.
Well, Dan Campbell has a comment on what you're touching on. I don't know if you heard this.
I have not heard. I may have, but maybe not.
I don't know where he said this, but this comes from prior to Detroit. They said that Dan Campbell says there are some parts to the game they may get better at with other people in the game instead of TJ Hawkinson. When asked what those aspects are, Campbell would not say. Do you see where we could possibly be better with Brock Wright at tight end?
The only thing
maybe
I can
run
think
blocking?
of, I was going to say the running game. That's quite literally it, because Brock Wright is not a good pass-catching tight end. I do think he's a solid blocking tight end, definitely superior to TJ Hawkinson in that regard. However, James Mitchell's not going to be a good tight end in this league. Neither is Brock Wright. I don't see what Dan Campbell's trying to say here. Because frankly, if you look at it at face value, it's a net minus for the offense. So the offense is not ready to go anymore. Is not that much improved from last season because now you're taking pieces away from it. It's not done and ready to start winning with once it gets a defense. Because we're still removing pieces and trying to plug different things in. So what the hell is your answer at tight end long-term? One.
And there's no guarantee that DeAndre Swift is going to be sticking around because if he can't stay healthy, there's no point.
There's two pieces you're going to have to fill. And by the way, we still don't know who our number one receiver is. Can you sit here and say Jameson Williams is the guy? I can't. Nope. DJ Chark certainly isn't it. Where is the last time we've had a DJ Chark sighting? Or when is the last time we've had a DJ Chark sighting?
That man is MIA.
Exactly. So who's the number one on this team? Who's the number one running back on this team? Who's the number one tight end on this team?
Right now it's
I'll throw it out there. Who is QB1 on this team?
ASB, Jamal Williams, Brock Wright, Jared Goff. Lethal.
So what the hell did we gain this season? What the hell did we gain last offseason? This team has done nothing to improve itself long term. Now in the second year of this regime.
Now, I can sprinkle a little bit of brightness on this parade here because I agree with everything that you're saying. But if I'm not mistaken, I think the Lions now have, 6 draft picks in the first 3 rounds of the draft next year?
Wonderful. This team has such a great track record of drafting. Wonderful. Love it. Signed TJ Hawkinson, who just got shipped off for a second and third round pick, and we had to give up picks to do that.
Let's be fair. We can't really give Brad Holmes has had a bad track record.
Brad Holmes second round draft picks panning out? Josh Pascal's played 2 games?
He doesn't look terrible though.
I don't think he's been an impact player, but 2 games, that's what we're going to, give him credit for.
So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, at most, you can give it incomplete. That's what I was saying. But yeah, we have 2 firsts, 2 seconds. We have 5 in the first 3 rounds. We have 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a third.
You honestly look at the Lions draft from this past year. Name one guy who deserves anything better than an incomplete. Malcolm Rodriguez, maybe.
I mean, I think they all deserve an incomplete. It's been 7 games.
Well, I mean,
I'm not ready to say anyone. I'm not ready to say one's been good. I'm not ready to say one has been absolute bust. You can
usually give halfway point grades for draft picks through their first year, and we're just about there. And frankly, I don't really have a very good grade for anybody. Aiden Hutchinson, I'd probably give him like a C+.
Yeah, your 6th round pick may have been your best pick so far.
Yeah. So are we really looking at Brad Holmes draft picks with such high regard right now? Panay Sewell basically fell into your lap.
Made the right pick though.
Not that hard to do when it's punching you in the face. His 2nd round pick from last year. Who was it?
Was it Levi Onwuzurike?
I think it was Levi. Levi Onwuzurike. What the hell has he done?
Been hurt a damn lot. That's what he's done.
He's about to be cut. That's what he's done. 3rd round pick, Lee McNeil. He's been nice. No, he hasn't. He's played terrible this year. He's been garbage.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, when healthy, has been nice.
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown is great. Congrats. You've got 1 draft pick in each draft. Woo! 2. I can't even sit here and tell you that that all of his first round picks have been good because I don't know anything about Jameson Williams yet. All I know is that the dude has had setback after setback with his ACL.
That's what I'm saying. Like, at worst, you can give it incomplete. Like, you can't really say anyone's been a complete bust. You can't really say anyone's been great.
We're not getting any value out of these picks. That's what I can say right here, right now. We have earned no value out of these picks. Jameson Williams, what value has he provided? None. He hasn't played it down. Yet. Yeah. Josh Pascal, how much value has he brought you? None.
Has given you a lot of value.
Okay, Panay Sewell's 1.
Malcolm Rodriguez might be your best linebacker.
He might be, but the bar's not exactly set high. If you're gonna sit here and try to say that Brad Holmes done a great job drafting because he's got 2 guys from drafts that have played decent minutes and decent production on this team, I'll sit here and tell you go take a look at the Seattle Seahawks that are playing with 6 picks from this draft alone, playing good football.
Well, the Seahawks are a fantastic organization.
That's a good GM. Well, actually, over the last half decade or so, they've looked terrible as an organization. They've just refused to put an offensive line in front of Russell Wilson, even though he's straight up asked for it. That's not a good organization. Then this year was supposed to be the teardown year where they just get rid of everybody. They get rid of Russell Wilson. They got rid of Bobby Wagner. And they're still winning football games. And they're still getting a lot of production from rookies. And not one, not two, not three, but 6 of them.
So what are you trying to argue here? Are you out on Brad Holmes? You don't want to run this next draft?
I am getting extremely close to being out on Brad Holmes, yeah. Because what the hell has he done to provide meaningful value to this team at this point? His free agency signings have been absolutely garbage all across the board.
That'll give you.
His draft picks have been probably less than 40% successful. What's a positive from Brad Holmes at this point?
Again, I'm of the belief
the first round picks that stare you in the face.
I'm of the belief that the draft picks, it's hard to give anything incomplete because at most they've played less than 20 games. Actually, no, there's some that play a little bit more than 20 games, but.
Okay, but if you're continuing to draft injured player after injured player, when the hell are you going to get? How are you going to get value out of that? At some point, you need guys to step foot on the football field and do something. And I'm looking at Levi Onwuzurike. I'm looking at Josh Pascal. I'm looking at Jameson Williams. At some point, these guys need to play football. And if you're just continuing to take guys that are incapable of staying healthy, then you are doing a poor job as a GM. Because I'm sorry, the other GMs have to deal with the same scouting reports you see, the same, they have the same doctors that look at the health of these players. They know the same history of injury with these guys as you get. Unless you think that you're going to sit here and tell me that the league just makes sure that the Lions are shunned from these health reports, that everybody else isn't, then I don't know what to tell you at that point. Just sell the team.
Yeah, for me, my biggest indictment on Brad Holmes is the either refusal or inability to bring in quality free agents. I mean, my favorite free agent signing by him so far has been DJ Chark, and he's barely stepped foot on the football field. So, and that to me is the biggest indictment because you look at teams like the Pistons or Red Wings, that's kind of the phase they're in right now. They've been bringing in either via trade or via free agent signing. They started bringing veteran help.
Yeah.
For some reason, Brad Holmes
and fun fact,
not on that wagon yet.
Those free agent signings have played huge roles on those teams. David Perron, Dominic Kubalik leads team in points. David Perron leads team in goals, I believe. You look over at the Pistons, Bojan Bogdanovic at some nights looks like the best player on the floor. An adult in the locker room. One of the only ones, and that team seriously lacks an adult in the locker room. But one of the only ones. I'll be honest with you. I am extremely close to just saying I'm done with Brad Holmes. I'm already at a point where I'm done with Dan Campbell. I've given you what I need him, what I need this team to do to get me back on this train with Dan Campbell. Because right now I'm off of it.
Yeah, I pretty much gave the ultimatum last week. I said this is a must-win game for me to still be on board with Dan Campbell. This is the perfect get-right spot. You finally get home. You get ASB back. Supposedly you were getting DeAndre Swift back. No one said he was not 100%. And you're going against a team that has not been playing good football the last 4 weeks. And you came in and got popped. I'm out.
I'm right there with you.
And then the nail in the coffin is a straight month of not scoring in the second half of football.
That is such a referendum on how terrible this team has been with making adjustments halfway through a game.
That's all coaching.
Every other team in the league and every other team that you have faced through this season is better than you at making adjustments. By far. You've shown a complete inability to do anything to combat an opponent's adjustment. Anything. I don't know how anybody can be on board with a coaching staff that looks like that. Because frankly, as much as I want to believe in Ben Johnson and the passing game coordinators of this team and Deuce Staley and Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell, right now I have zero confidence in any of them. Zero. How does how do you have a situation where you have a game plan going into a game where you want to press the receivers of the opposing team and they don't even run into a single pass where there is a defensive back within a yard of the receiver when the pass is thrown? Yeah, that report came out today. Yeah. Not a single defensive back was within 1 yard of a receiver when the ball came to them. Not a single yard. Is that not their job? How does that happen?
That's exactly their job.
37 times. Sorry, 36.
Yeah.
Not a single one of those passes had a defensive back within a yard of a receiver.
Now, like the other side of the argument, one could say, well, yeah, because if someone throws a receiver the ball, it usually means they're open. But when the two receivers go
36 times?
When the two receivers go for 300 yards, that means they're open a lot. Okay.
If you're allowing receivers to be open 36 times in a football game,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
I don't know how Aaron Glenn allows Aubrey Pleasant to allow that.
It's not like we were saying there were 10 completions in total to receivers, and those 10 completions, we were all at least 1 yard off the receiver. That's not how this one works.
That report included incompletions. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah,
so it wasn't our defensive secondary.
It was targets.
Right.
It wasn't completions.
That secondary wasn't causing the 7 incompletions that happened. Yeah. It was either a drop pass or a badly thrown ball. Like, your defense quite literally did nothing to stunt their passing game.
Yep.
Quite literally nothing. How does a coaching staff allow your defensive secondary to just completely ignore the game plan?
Yeah.
And I get that's why we fired Aubrey Pleasant. That's great, but something has to come down on Aaron Glenn at that point because he's in control of that defense.
Something has to come down on Dan Campbell at that point too. Like,
yeah.
This is what we were worried about. People are going to stop listening. If you might be the best speaker in the world in that locker room, but if you're not winning games, people are going to stop listening.
Nobody's going to care what you have to say.
Yep.
And it's already showing.
Shall we look forward to Green Bay?
Let's look forward to Green Bay.
Where is the spread on that game currently?
Does it matter?
Doesn't matter. I'm taking Green Bay.
You are at home. Green Bay looks god awful.
They do.
I'll
put it this way: if you had managed to put together a solid second half and beat the Dolphins, and the Hawkinson trade didn't reek of giving up, I was taking you guys this week. But no, you're going to Green Bay. You're hosting Green Bay, 5-point home dogs. Some reeks.
Yeah. It really starting to sound like Green. Now, I did see a stat the other day, or a line the other day, that has the Lions over under on their season win total updated to 5.5. Do you see this team winning 5 more games? That's them going 500 the rest of the way.
They do get to play Chicago twice, but then
wonderful.
again,
are you at this point? Can you say they're better than Chicago?
Chicago just got not Cordero Patterson. What's his face from
Chase
the
Claypool.
Steelers? Chase Claypool. Thank you.
Wonderful. Justin Fields going to overthrow him too.
Did you hear the backstory behind that? By the way,
no, I didn't. Was that apparently for Chase Claypool?
No, apparently the Packers had a deal in place to acquire him, and then the Bears came at the 11th hour and won up their deal.
Honestly, I gotta ask a lot of questions about the Packers.
Good old NFC North rivalry.
How did the Packers just not do something at the deadline? Like, Brandon Cooks was available. I get not wanting to pay a salary, but there's got to be something you can do to get the Texans to cover some of that salary. How do you not go get a receiver? Because you clearly are in dire need of one.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're not a Packers show. We're a Lions show. But Lions you said -5 or +5.5.
Like, normally right now it's +5 even is what I'm seeing. But normally you give me home dog division rivalry and you're giving me 5 points. I'm hopping on that 5 points.
Neither team is any good.
Yeah. I'm hopping on that 5 points all day normally.
Yeah, I would too.
Do not. It's basically, this is a bet Lions or pass kind of game, and I'm passing. That's what I'm saying.
I would probably also.
I have no confidence to actually put money on the Lions at this point, even though they pushed for me yesterday on Sunday because I got them at +4. But
if the Lions lose this football game, I don't think there's anything that they could do the rest of the season that would get me back on board. They could run the table, and I'd probably still say it's time to get rid of Dan Campbell.
You understand Aaron Rodgers is going to cook us, right? He's pissed.
Oh, I'm sure. I fully believe that. I don't see a situation where Aaron Rodgers goes 3-6 in the season because of the Lions.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way the Lions make Aaron Rodgers go to 3-6. There's just no chance. Like I'm done.
We're easily the worst secondaries he's faced all season.
At this, week 8 into the season here, week 9 of the football season. I'm here looking at, all right, who we taking in the draft? How many games do we? How can we lose out the season to ensure that we get the number 1 overall pick? Have our choice of Will Anderson, Bryce Young, or C.J. Stroud.
Yep.
How can we make that happen? Because at this point, there is very little that can redeem Dan Campbell and this coaching staff for me.
You're going into 2 very winnable games. You got to start by losing those.
Yeah. The thing that bothers me the most is I know based on the sounds from Holmes and this front office and as well as this ownership from Sheila Hamp. Sorry, Dan Campbell's back next year. There's no chance of him being gone. Doesn't matter what he does.
Full faith in Dan Campbell.
How? How can you watch this football team and have faith in him?
I'm not going to sit here and say like you fired Dan Campbell mid-season, but I don't. At this point in time, how do you sit here and be like, oh yeah, he's definitely coming back next year? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't, because this team has won 1 football game this season, and their only win came against a really bad Washington football team.
Much like Matt Patricia, he hasn't shown any reason that he's suddenly going to turn it around in year 3.
No. And you know what? You know what would be the absolute
1 year too long with Patricia
bane of my existence? Dan Campbell loses, the next one and then wins one, and then goes like 500 the rest of the way.
He's probably going to win like 3 more, I'd say.
That would drive me nuts.
4 games max, meaning I'd take the under still on the 5.5. But
like if you told me that this team went 3-12-1 or 3-13-1, whatever it was, and then they went 3-14 the year after, I'd ask you, all right, so who's going to be their next head coach?
Yep.
Because clearly that one's not a good one. And that would be true for any team. All right, who's the next head coach? How can you allow 2 god-awful... Like, there is 0 improvement there. How do you not... how do you just accept 0 improvement in the NFL? That's unacceptable in my mind, especially when you're that bad.
Yeah.
Because you're at the floor. So you're telling me they didn't even get up? Not even to a knee?
Nope.
The record's technically worse than last year? Like, come on.
Ain't no kneecaps being bit off here, man.
No. Not with this.
So move on to the Pistons?
Please.
All right. This is a much brighter story. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. The Pistons are another reason why I'm on Dan Campbell. Because
let me ask you something before we fully switch over.
Yeah.
What do Lions got to do to beat the Packers this weekend?
What do they have to do to beat the Packers this weekend?
What do they got to do?
Aaron Rodgers is going to cook you whatever you do. Focus on stopping the run, stop Aaron Jones. If you can do that, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have the greatest receivers at his disposal at
his
this moment
receivers
in
won't
time.
beat you.
Yeah, so like let him do what he's going to do. If you can stop the run game, you have a shot to win, no matter what.
I kind of agree with you. I'm going to add to that. I'm going to take, piggyback off what you said, and I'm going to add play 2 halves of football.
Well, there you go. There's that.
Because clearly you've only played 1 half in the last. Well, shit, you didn't even play a half of football previous 2. But anyways, 2 halves of football, and I think you can win this game.
So, moving on to the Pistons. The Pistons had a deadly back-to-back over the weekend.
You were going to tell me the reason why the Pistons are the reason why you're even more out.
That's what I'm telling you. The Pistons had a deadly back-to-back over the weekend. They hosted the Warriors on Sunday, and then the next day...
Not to mention they had the Hawks on Friday.
Yeah, and the next day they had a both travel day and a back-to-back on the road against the best team in basketball in the Milwaukee Bucks. They beat the Warriors at home, and they were a Cade Cunningham missed 3 away from being the Bucks in Milwaukee. And that's after they got pummeled by the Hawks on Friday night, even though they played them well on Wednesday, but they got pummeled by them on Friday night. They basically showed me that there are no excuses. Like, yes, they played two teams that are incredibly better than they are and incredibly more experienced than they are, and they still beat one and took one down to the wire. Meanwhile, for the past 7 weeks, we've been making excuses left and right with Dan Campbell. Like, oh, well, this team is incomplete. Oh, well, this team is clearly better than you. Oh, you don't have a good secondary. They still found a way to get it done.
You haven't found a kicker.
Yep.
Newsflash, you have now. Thank you.
They still found a way to compete. Why can't it's? And I was watching that Bucks game, and like the Pistons were not looking good in the first half, and they fought back and they clawed back and they came all the way back. And I was like, why? What is the difference between this team and the Lions? They're both young teams. They both have really good young talent on said team.
I'll be honest with you.
Why is one laying down and taking it while the other one's fighting?
I think it's the Pistons have a lot better talent than the Lions do. The Pistons have a true, like a number one overall pick, and whereas you say, oh, so do the Lions with Aiden Hutchinson. Granted, he's number 2. It matters more in basketball than it does in football.
It does.
One player makes a bigger difference. And when you have a Cade Cunningham on the floor, who is probably one of the better players in the league, it makes a big difference.
Yep.
And the talent around Cade Cunningham, I think, is a lot better. You look at Sadiq Bey. He's not exactly had a great start to his season, but he's a good player. Jaden Ivey, he's starting to look pretty good. Shooting 40% from 3, I believe, actually, which is really surprising. You have Bojan Bogdanovic, who's been awesome, and then they just recently re-upped him.
Yep.
You have Isaiah Stewart, who at times has looked really good this season. Like, you have talent around a star player in Cade Cunningham, and that talent is better than anything the Lions would have comparatively speaking.
Yep.
I think the talent is really what's caused this team to be competitive in most of these games. I don't think they're as far behind in the talent talent aspect of the game against other teams versus where the Lions are.
Now, here's where I will draw a pretty distinct parallel in my eyes between the Lions and the Pistons. At least up until this past weekend, both teams have, for the most part, have had high octane offenses, but basically let anything pass by them on defense.
The Pistons defense has been terrible.
The difference is, over the weekend, the Pistons held both the Warriors and the Bucks to their second lowest totals on the year.
I believe the Warriors were on a back-to-back, weren't they?
Yeah, and the Pistons played the Bucks on a back-to-back. I mean,
okay. Well, again, shooting teams in back-to-backs tend to be not as successful.
But they're actually building on their previous games, is what it looks like to me. Cade Cunningham, for example. Cade Cunningham, the first few games of the season,
he's been an absolute star the last week or so.
The first few games of this season, he was trying to attack the basket. He was trying to use his size down low, get to the bucket, and he's starting to realize that it's going to work against guards, but when there's bigs down there, it's not working. Like, you're getting stuffed, or you're just putting up a bad shot. You watch that Bucks game, so many times he would look like he's about to drive to the basket, pull up for a mid-range, dagger. Pull up for a mid-range,
something I will say about Cade that I think is a real sign of his growth is you look at historically in Cade's career so far, in his young career, against the Bucks, Drew Holiday has absolutely dominated him. Cade Cunningham has looked terrible against the Bucks in his career so far. And you saw true growth in Cade's game against Drew Holiday this past week, to where Cade was able to find his spots and be efficient in his spots, and I don't want to say cook Drew Holiday, but he
just wasn't letting Drew Holiday bait him to the rim. That's what.
And it was really effective for Cade. You really saw some growth in that game there. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, and so I'm a little bit less, I don't want to say pessimistic, but I'm not as high on the job the Pistons have done so far this year.
I'm not talking about this year. I'm just talking about the last two games. They've been terrible.
Yes, the last few games have been
absolute garbage up until then.
The last few games have been better.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. But every team goes through good stretches. I haven't really seen
saying that they're playing the Bucks tonight too,
and they could get absolutely walked all over. Yes. I'm not going to sit here and say that I've been happy with the way that this team has played this year because I haven't. And I've in our group text with our buddy Alex, like I've been openly asking questions about not only Dwayne Casey but also Troy Weaver and the way he's put together this team. It's now year 3. He has quite literally a 0 bench right now. Like 14 points is a good night for our bench.
Yeah,
that's sad. And I get you are dealing with some injuries here.
Yeah,
but let's be real. Alec Burks is not going to provide you 20 points. Neither Marvin Bagley could on his best.
I think both could be in the teams though.
Maybe.
I just think
regardless.
Again, I'm not trying to make excuses for the bench, but I do want to wait and see what this bench looks like once we have Burks and Bagley back.
That's fine, but
it does hurt that we just lost Duran. But
it does. But when it comes to a scoring presence, that's only 2 guys.
Yeah,
your bench needs to have a couple more than 2 scorers.
And you in general, you need to bring more adults in the room. You got Bogey.
Oh God,
that's great,
fantastic. That's my biggest issue with this team. This team has 0 adults in the room. These are guys who are, one of the most.
You got Bogey. That's fantastic.
That's wonderful. But he's never been an adult in a prominent role on a team. He's never been in a leadership role on a team. He's always been a tertiary guy, a guy that you tell to go stand on the wing, will get you the ball, you shoot ball. You make shot, good, clap, clap. Like, he's never been the guy that's the voice in the locker room.
Kojo very much feels like the veteran leader on this team. I don't want him to be. So
neither do I. Like, you have quite literally 2 adults in the room, Corey Joseph and Bojan Bogdanovic. Everybody else is a child. You have a kindergarten playground or a kindergarten classroom in your locker room. Like it's a bunch of kids.
Well, you have Magruder, but he barely ever sees the floor.
If you don't put adults in your locker room, it could severely stunt the growth of these players. They need somebody to guide them on how to be NBA players.
Yeah.
And
I think they will because they have cap space. They eventually got to use it. So,
and that includes guys like Cade who have all the talent in the world and have a great head on their shoulders. If he doesn't have someone to give him some guidance in this league, he won't ever reach his potential. And that goes like that's kind of one of my issues with Troy Weaver is he's been incapable of adding a veteran leader to this team. I've been asking for it for 10 years now across Stan Van Gundy, across whoever the hell was the GM, and and now we're looking at Troy Weaver and we still don't have a veteran leader on this team.
Well, Blake Griffin was supposed to be that guy with Stan Van Gundy, but it was also a terrible trade.
That dude stares at himself more in the mirror than he looks at a basketball. Like, Troy Weaver needs to build depth and bring in leadership.
Yeah.
If they want this team to be successful, if they want this young talent to reach its potential, that's what they need.
Yeah, that's the next step. You've got your young talent here to basically form the identity of this team in the long term, but now is the next step where you bring in the veteran leaders to take that next step and actually compete. Because you're not going to compete with this young, unless you're the Memphis Grizzlies. You're not going to compete with this young of a roster.
No, you're not.
And it's not like I don't trust Troy Weaver to do that.
Grizzlies have some adults in the room too.
I think they're still on average the youngest roster.
I think they are, but like their adults in the room are at least guys that have been in the league for like 5 years. I consider an adult in the room to be like a 26, 27-year-old. The Grizzlies have a couple of those guys.
Yeah. But yeah, it's for me, the Red Wings and the Pistons are the only 2 teams this time I'm not pessimistic on at the moment. So, and that's sad because at this time last year, I was super optimistic about all 4 teams.
I was too. Like I was extremely optimistic about all 4 teams, and I'm straight up done with the Tigers. Like that, I'm out on them. I'm glad they fired their GM. That's a step in the right direction, but we're starting from ground zero at this point. The Lions, I'm out. Like I don't have faith in Dan Campbell, and I have next to zero faith in Brad Holmes. The Pistons, I have some faith in. I'm starting to ask questions about Troy Weaver because basketball in the NBA is another sport where you should be able to be done with your rebuild within 3-4 years. And I can't even sit here and tell you the Pistons are close. Because to win in the NBA, you need to have some guys on some productive players and highly productive players on cheap deals. Well, you're starting to near the end of that. Because
we're in the beginning of year 3. The first 2 years we've gotten a lot of young talent on this roster.
Right. Well,
now the next 2 years are adding your veteran pieces.
Their contracts start to balloon a bit.
Yeah.
That includes Sadiq Bey, Killian Hayes.
Who was it that posts on Twitter? He goes, He goes, There's times when I hate that Troy Weaver is so good at drafting because it's just going to cost us more in the long run.
Can you really? Okay, there's another thing. Can you really say his drafting's been that good?
Yes. There's only one miss so far in my eyes,
and it's a huge one. It's a huge one.
But it was also a really bad draft class.
And we're not 100% sold. We're not 100% on Isaiah Stewart or Sadiq Bey yet. Mm-hmm. Neither one of those guys has cemented themselves as a role on this team. Neither one. As a long-term role, I should say.
Yeah.
Neither one. Sadiq Bey looks like he can be a really good
But if you look in the contracts that are at draft, those are still two good picks.
Not if they're not part of the team when we're ready to win. That's not a good draft pick at that point. That's a net minus. Unless you're getting a lottery pick in return.
Unless you netted something good for him. Like
a lottery pick.
Yeah.
Which, at this point, I don't think you can get for either one of them.
Like you look at the other two era Pistons. Like both Grant Hill and Jerry Stackhouse were good picks. Neither of them were part of the team when we started to compete. But that's because we got our competing pieces for them. But
that's wonderful. Yeah. But again, if you are not going to be able to get really high level pieces for those guys, and at this point right now, I don't know what you can. Maybe you can for Sadiq Bey. I don't think you would for Isaiah Stewart right now. That's a net minus in my mind. That's not I like both players a lot. I want to see them succeed.
Same.
I've seen some issues with their game that makes me wonder how much value they can bring to this roster long term. Isaiah Stewart is actively doing things to improve that, and so is Sadiq Bey. Sadiq Bey has a serious consistency issue. That has kind of been his calling card throughout his entire career at this point. I fight like hell for Sadiq Bey to anytime anybody talks to me about Sadiq Bey, I'm one of his biggest cheerleaders. I love the guy's game. But at some point, and that point is going to come up pretty soon, considering he's only got that's Isaiah Stewart. So 2 years in a qualifying offer. So 2 years left on his contract where I have to say, is he worth re-signing? The question does end up have to be asked because he's going to command money at that point.
Yeah, the big question I remember having for Sadiq Bey was like, can he be productive if the three ball isn't falling? And I mean, for the most part, it's kind of been the same question this year so far too. He's had one game, I believe, against the Pacers where he still had a really good game despite shooting pretty poorly from the 3-point line. But for the most part, like his game goes as his three ball goes.
The thing that I've, the problem that I have with Sadiq Bey, and not necessarily the person, but his game, is the fact that we haven't seen a glimpse of that question being answered. We haven't really seen anything to say that he can transform his game if the shot's not there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We had, for example, we already had one this year, but again, he's got to do it more consistently.
Right. Isaiah Stewart, on the other hand, has shown an ability to transform. Trying to show an ability to transform his game. He knows he can't be the on the block guy. He's not big enough. Well, move him outside. Can he make that an effective part of his game? Well, I'll sit here and tell you he's damn well trying hard. So in my book right now,
we'll see where it ends up by season's end.
Right. Obviously, there's no guarantee that it works out, but I've seen a lot of positive steps in the right direction with Isaiah Stewart that I'm not quite sure I've seen the same size of steps in the positive direction for Sadiq Bey. I think Sadiq Bey is a better basketball player. I don't think his game is improving at the same rate Stewart's is.
Every young player on this roster has questions. I mean, Cade, can he clean up the turnovers? Can he be more efficient? Jane Ivey, I mean, again, he's only 7 games into his career, but
I'm not even ready to talk about yet. That's too new.
Yeah. Killian Hayes, can he develop an offensive game?
I think we have the answer to that question in it. But again, I'll reiterate
I have
the
one
question.
foot out the door on Killian Hayes this point.
I am not quite ready to say Troy Weaver is a great drafter. I'm not quite ready. Because if Sadiq Bey and Isaiah
100% draft rate.
Okay, but I can't really count Cade Cunningham for him, can I? Because that one stared you in the face. That one said, I'm here, and announced it for you. He didn't do a damn thing in the Cade Cunningham draft. He just had to win the draft lottery, which he didn't even do. Ben Wallace did. So I can't sit here and say that Troy Weaver's done this immaculate job at drafting when we don't know if the two guys that actually have it are actually going to be good basketball players, and the third guy he actually had to do some homework on was bad.
No, I'm not saying he's immaculate, but so far I don't really have concerns. I really like Ivy and Duran. I really like Sadiq and Beef Stew. Like, I don't really have concerns.
Don't pan out, and like time is ticking there. Because their next contracts are going to be after next season. The question needs to be asked. They will have had 4 seasons of basketball. The question needs to be asked.
I think you're a little bit lower on Sadiq and Stu than I am, but
I'm not low on them at all. I'm not seeing enough improvement in their games to year over year to say that these guys are just automatic hits.
Oh, I'm not like. All I'm saying is they're good draft picks in the context of where they were taking. That's all I'm saying.
If it doesn't net you a positive value, are they good draft picks? The answer is no. If you don't have you could argue T.J. Hawkinson was a good draft pick, but he netted you a negative value. He's a good player, but he netted you negative value. They can be good players and not get you a positive value on the return. That's what I'm looking at. That's
I'm not either going to say T.J. Hawkinson was a good draft pick.
No, he wasn't a good draft pick.
We hated at the time.
It's not a position you draft in that situation.
Yeah.
But my point is, he's a good player.
Not his fault,
no,
but
but he is a good player.
Yeah.
But it netted you a negative return. That's what I'm wondering in the case. That's what I'm looking at with Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart here is, will it net you a positive return in the end, whether it be with them on the floor or in the, in the event that you do trade them, does it net you a positive return? Do you get a lottery pick for one of them or both of them? Because that's what it would take, or, value in terms of assets, players, basically. That's what I'm wondering at this point. Because right now, I can't sit here and tell you definitively that that's what you would get if you traded them right now. I think you would, just because of their youth. But in terms of the value they bring on the floor, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Sadiq Bey, you definitely would. But that also has to do with his youth.
Yeah.
So,
even though he's not as young as the rest of the guys.
But I think he's a more valuable player right now.
Yeah. And I do agree that I think that the value you could get in return for Isaiah Stewart is going to be reliant on his 3-ball.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And I think Sadiq Bey is a better basketball player right now than Isaiah Stewart. But I have seen more improvement in Isaiah Stewart's game this year than I have Sadiq Bey's. I've seen bigger steps taken there. I love both players, but I need to see steps in the right direction with these guys, because looking at last year with Sadiq Bey and looking at this year with Sadiq Bey, I almost would say Sadiq Bey last year was a better player than he has been this year.
Am I being childish for being mad at Diallo for the Duran injury?
I'll be honest with you. I'm just about done with him on this team. He doesn't provide positive value in my book.
He had a good game against Milwaukee.
Yes, had a good game.
Yeah.
Finally.
But yeah, I heard that Jalen Duren's was I think grade 3 is the worst ankle sprain, a complete tear of the ligament in the ankle. So it's going to be
a long time.
It's a high ankle sprain. It's going to be a while.
That's wonderful. That's great. Just what we wanted for our 18-year-old center that looks like a star.
Yeah.
Great.
And we could have really used them against Milwaukee, too, because that's where we were getting beat, was down low. We could have used that post presence.
Well, it doesn't help when a guy by the name of Giannis Antetokounmpo is just able to just walk all over you. Granted, he does it to everybody. So
he does it to everybody.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to stop. You need a Victor Wembanyama to stop a guy like that. And even Victor Wembanyama, I feel like Giannis would walk all over.
One can only dream.
I have a lot of hopes for this team. I still believe in Troy Weaver. There are some questions coming up, and I don't know why he believes in Dwayne Casey so much. I think a lot of this team's issues come down to Dwayne Casey's coaching. I really do believe that.
A lot of their issues are on the defensive end and discipline on the offensive end, and that's all coachable stuff. So,
yeah. And last year, I had questions with the way he played his lineups. I did not understand them at all half the time.
So he's been adjusting a little more.
I've definitely liked the way he's played his lineups this year better than
he's finally learning from the beginning of the season and now learned that he's going to have to need to stagger Ivy and Cade right now just to make up for the
Balance the
deficiency at the guard
scoring.
position.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because that bench is terrible.
I think, honestly, you might have to do that throughout the entire season because,
until you get reinforcements in there, yeah.
well, newsflash, bright lights, there are no guard reinforcements coming for you because Alec Burks is a wing and Marvin Bagley's a center. So there is nothing coming in your backcourt that can, there's no knight in shining armor, power veer on a horse running in there as a guard.
And it is unfortunate because he was saying when Bagley comes back, he wanted to run some lineups with Stewart and Duren together to see how they mesh together. And
damn, that would be fun.
Yeah, that's not going to happen for a while. So.
No. Damn, that sucks. Oh man, I really wanted to see that. I wanted to see a lineup of Cade, Jaden, Sadiq, Stewart, and Duren. Like that right there, that is a lineup I can picture being your long-term core, your five, the five players that get named to the All-Star game together. You got the full Pistons lineup out there again. God, was that a fun time. Yeah. That I could see being a thing.
Yeah.
And we get robbed of it this year. Thanks, Diallo.
Hopefully by like the All-Star break, we'll get Duren back. That's because high ankle sprain is 2-3 months usually.
Yeah. Do you take it slow with them?
I mean, it's a sprain, not a break. Like,
I understand, but like,
look at high ankle sprain. High ankle sprain is something long-term thing.
No, but it is something that can nag long term.
I never had one, so I don't know.
Yeah, they can nag you for an entire season if you don't.
I've had an ankle sprain, but not a high ankle sprain. The thing with the high ankle sprain is it needs long-term rest. Like it needs a couple months. Yeah, you're healing a ligament.
Yeah. And it is something that if it doesn't get the proper rest and you rush it back, it will nag and hinder you for a long time.
Yeah, no, don't rush him back. If it's at no point,
if I don't see Duren again until the last 20 games of the season, I'll sit here and say that's okay if that's what it took for it to be fully healed. He's 18.
Yeah,
I don't want to risk anything long term.
You're not going anywhere this year, anyways. So
much to my disappointment.
What are you giving up? A 10 seed?
Right.
A play-in spot where you probably can get popped, maybe.
If the team isn't competing for, an 8-9 seed next year,
then I'll have a lot of serious questions. I'm expecting the team or Troy Weaver to bring some veteran help between now and that time. And if we're not competing, it's either because Troy Weaver's remained stagnant, kind of like Brad Holmes did last offseason, or it's because these young guys are not meshing together.
I want Troy Weaver
Either way, I'll be worried.
I want Troy Weaver to have a Stevie Y-esque offseason this year.
I agree.
Bring in true professionals.
Yeah. Now, Stevie Y didn't bring in a superstar or anything, but bringing guys that are going to help this team.
Bring in true professionals that shore up your weaknesses. They had a serious weakness with the defense in last season. They had no, and I mean quite literally no, stronghold defending left-handed D-men, and he went and signed 2 of them.
Yeah, give me more transactions.
Granted, I will say at points this season, their defenses looked god-awful.
Last game, case in point.
The Ducks game is another one. I mean, last game, they damn near gave up 50 shots to the Sabres. Don't even get me started on that. But the other thing that he brought in, they lacked second-line production. They went and brought in 3 second-line guys that have at least 2 of them have been producing at very high levels. They lacked on the power play. Guess what? They fixed that problem. Their power plays look pretty good. I want Troy Weaver to have a Stevie Y-esque offseason. Bring adults into the room that are leaders and also fill your needs.
I want more moves like the move you did to bring Bogey in. It doesn't have to be a trade, but like that's the idea in terms of you brought in a veteran presence that fits a major need, which is 3-point shooting and a position of need.
I got an interesting proposition for you.
Yeah, what's up? We'll close out with this. I feel like we've been running a little bit long.
Pistons land in the draft lottery. They land the number 8 overall pick.
That seems very realistic.
Phone call comes in. I can't give you an exact player. Let's say someone along the, maybe not this exact
Marcus
guy,
Smart.
Sure.
Okay.
I was gonna say someone along the realm in terms of player talent and type of player or role of an Andrew Wiggins. Marcus Smart would fall in that realm.
Yep.
For that number 8 overall pick, do you do it?
Yes.
I do too. I do too.
You're not high enough where I think you're gonna get because I don't. At least the research I've done in this draft so far, I'm not convinced on how deep this class is. I'm more convinced of the top level talent in this draft. So I don't know at 8 if you're going to get a game changer. Getting a veteran talent that either in Andrew Wiggins type will really help offensively or in Marcus Smart's type will really help defensively and give you a veteran presence in the locker room, I think is a lot more important. So
I agree with
yes.
you. I would probably do it all the way up to number 5, and I'd probably even be willing to give up another first round pick in the future, honest as well.
At that point, I would need a clearer picture of the draft board, but
I mean, yeah, obviously, but again, that's kind of where I'm at with this team, where I'm willing to give up future assets like that.
Yeah.
In order,
that's the mode you're in now. You've got your young talent. You can now be in buy mode.
Yes. I want to start winning basketball games, and I've been saying that for a little while now. But I'm willing.
We can't do
to
the same. We can't do the Sam Presti thing where we're just gonna year after year just keep selling pieces, accumulating draft picks, selling pieces, accumulating draft picks, kicking the can down the road, kicking the can down the road.
Worked out for them?
Exactly. I mean, it's gonna be fun to watch Holmgren and Poku together next year, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one team I don't want to land Victor Wembanyama. I don't want to reward this hoarding of draft picks.
Why the hell would you want to put that kind of star power in OKC?
Yeah. I mean, they would have a bunch of freakazoids over there. But
but why the hell would you want to put that kind of star power there? That's not a big enough market for that.
Little Oklahoma City.
Yeah, not a big enough market for something like that. But then again, we're in Detroit, so what do we have to say? We're a bigger market than OKC. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah,
way better sports town. Come at me, OKC fans. Anyways, we'll close out with that. Thank you guys for listening. Andrew, thank you for joining me. We will catch you guys next week. This has been the Fan Report Wars by fans.
For fans.
Follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. Thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast at Detroit Podcast on Twitter. We will catch you guys next week. Go Lions this weekend and go Pistons, go Wings. Well, Tigers are done. So
let's hope they don't make me look stupid today for being optimistic about them. Let's hope they just keep it up tonight.
I hope so too. I want to see them play well. I want to see continued improvement from this team because we saw we've seen an improvement this week over last. Let's keep it rolling.
Yep.
So, anyways, thank you guys. Have a good one. Peace out.
Peace.